WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, whatever you're celebrating here this week. Certainly celebrating some good health, hopefully getting some eggnog, taking care of our partners and the wise conversations that we have. We've been given some tips on shopping this week. We have recapped the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery with our friends at Goodwill and Window Nation. I'm wearing my Window Nation gear here. I am not a certified master installer if you're watching out on the Zoom, but you can reach them 866-90Nation for the holidays, staying nice and warm and toasty with the Christmas tree and all that. But we had just such a great afternoon at Costas. I want to thank the Costas family for 31 years and our anniversary, and Gina Schock, who came over, all the members of Beyond Words and Milkshake, and my dear art teacher from Dundalk High, Joyce Bucci, and John Allen, my lifer pal. Some great conversations about Hammerjacks, about the Go-Go's, about rock and roll in the 70s and 80s and the Marble Bar, all up now at Baltimore Positive. And maybe it'll salve the wounds of our purple souls here in town after just a dreadful football game and a Christmas Eve game here with the Atlanta Falcons. Luke Jones will be out in Owings Mills all week long here, not just eating the cornbread from Dennis Colatzos over Coons Baltimore Ford and some delicious Greek desserts, but we might need a better food on Christmas to make this thing wash away a little better. I remember Ghost to the Post back in 77. Been a number of years now, Luke, but Christmas Eve football around here, and what a turd in Cleveland. And just it doesn't look like a good football team right now. And I know you've written about that out of Baltimore Positive.
It was awful. I mean, what's funny is after watching the rest of the weekend, that was what, week 15. I'm still getting used to having that week 18 at the end of the schedule. It kind of throws me off from a
I
math
don't do good with
standpoint.
the odd numbers either. You know, they finished 10-7. Yes. Okay.
Right. But I mean, so many entertaining. I mean, you had a historic comeback by the Minnesota Vikings that preceded what we saw in Cleveland. In fact, as you know, me living in Southern York County, Pennsylvania, I missed the first quarter of the Ravens game. I couldn't get it, short of getting out the antenna to try to get BAL. But
well, I wore my Houston Oilers blue today to exercise all the demons of the Oilers and the Bills from back in the day, and I can get Rasig off my butt too after 30 years.
right. But I mean, just so many wild games. I mean, you had overtime games. I mean, whatever the heck that Patriots Raiders ending was, so many fun, entertaining, memorable football games over the weekend. And then there was Ravens Browns, which was, I mean, it was just, besides the fact that the Ravens lost, and we're going to talk about Greg Roman and this offense and not running the ball more and not being able to throw the ball. And is Lamar going to come back this week? And they sound hopeful, and we'll see what the practice week looks like. But it's just a bad football game to watch. It was one of those games where you keep checking your watch. You keep looking at the clock to say, is this over yet? I mean, it really just was not an entertaining football game, and it was an incredibly frustrating football game. And
hey, I text you at halftime. I'm reading my phone. I never bother you during the game. You're working, I'm working. In the modern era, we're trying to get our interweb together. You've got your tweet deck up. You're either at the game, sometimes at home when they let you in. But it's been weird. I never text you, but I text you at halftime. I think I went down to warm up some pizza at halftime, and I text you at 5:58. I said, such a horrible brand of football. Terrible.
Yeah, and that's where I joked with you. At least I wasn't subjected to that first quarter, which, and full disclosure, I went back and watched it just to be clear, because I always go back and rewatch the game. But I mean, just incredibly frustrating. And let's be fair, though. 2 weeks ago, now a little over 2 weeks ago, Lamar Jackson goes down at the end of the first quarter against Denver. What did we say about these back-to-back AFC North road games? If they got one of two, they were still in good shape. So as I wrote at BaltimorePositive.com, the Ravens are fine, right? They did what we said they needed to do. Well, you watch that game, and it wasn't all bad. J.K. Dobbins averaged 9.6 yards per carry. Gus Edwards was just under 8 yards per carry. The defense wasn't phenomenal, but it was certainly good. I mean, they only gave up 13 points, and the Browns did plenty to leave the Ravens in this football game and still give them a chance in the fourth quarter with missed field goals and mistakes and what have you. But it was just, I mean, it's not even just about Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley's not as good as Lamar Jackson. Newsflash, right? I mean, big shock there. It's just.
But I would say this: he's not
Oh,
an
it was
NFL
bad.
quarterback. Like,
Well,
I'm not being mean to the kid. He's a
he's not a
nice kid. He's
starter.
got a nice smile. Like, no credible National Football League team would put him behind center and say we're going to win games, because you're not. And that's no look, man. I saw Trace McSorley running around. Whatever this kid's name in Atlanta is coming in here this week. I got to get my program out and figure that out, because I saw him playing the other day. The Broncos. I mean, all of these backups, Cade McCown, like none of these guys are any good. And we're back to the point where, like, Matt Ryan's not any good anymore. Cam Newton's gone, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there Andrew Luck. There's like a whole generation of those guys that aren't here, or they're not going to make it. Like Baker Mayfield, despite his heroics with the Rams, last week. It's a have not situation, right? And there are some people that aren't sure that Lamar's a have if you have to stand in the pocket and throw the ball 38 times like a normal quarterback, that he's only a have when he's at, as you pointed out last week, full speed and willing to run 10 to 16 times a game, not 5 times a game, 12 to 16 to 18 times a game if they're going to be successful, or at least feign that he's going to run that much, and probably get sacked 1 or 2 times more than that. So this is they're in really a weird spot right now, because you look at their record, they look like a good team. I see Kornacki, they're 90 something percent to make the play. Like all that. They might even play in Tennessee week 1. They might have a puncher's chance to avoid have one of these other guys beat each other up. But dude, they're not a Super Bowl team right now. No, I mean, I'll sit here Christmas week and there's no Purple Rain 3 coming. I have very little doubt that you need to come out to the desert and do Super Bowl week with me. They don't look like a Super Bowl team anywhere right now. Anywhere. Now, I'm. You can talk about their defense, and they had a couple of injuries as well. I mean, Peters, Calais Campbell will go through that, but even with those guys, maybe they're a good enough defense, but they're not an elite defense. And all that Ray Lewis giving them the stink eye about 6 weeks ago all comes full circle right now. But dude, the offense, I mean, I look at who's in the huddle. Forget Lamar or not Lamar. I look at who else is in that huddle, and everything you wrote, once again, just like when you were writing about the cornerbacks 5 years ago, everything you've written about the wide receivers is true. I mean, like, they have a talent problem on offense. They really do.
Yeah, they do. And that's where I come back to Tyler Huntley. And look, he was very bad on Saturday. Let's be clear about that. And again, some of the talk about, whether he could be a starting quarterback elsewhere. I mean, I think clearly to put it in in a kindly way, you pump the brakes on that talk. However, Tyler Huntley played an extended period of time last season, and they were able to have a much more functional passing game. It wasn't a great passing game. Let's be very clear about that in terms of looking at yards per attempt, but they scored points. They were able to move the ball. But what we saw on Saturday, they ran the ball. They should have run the ball more. But at the same time, you look at that, Mark Andrews dropped a pass. Demarcus Robinson can't hold on to the football. Deshaun Jackson had a drop, and then another play where the cornerback out-muscled him on a slant pass that was very suspect. I mean, I don't like that call to a 36-year-old Deshaun Jackson, and that's where we go back to Greg Roman here. But, I mean, look who he's throwing the football to. And this is why, to me, I felt like I was a crazy person to hear people say that they thought they had enough at wide receiver over the summer. I mean, even before Rashad Bateman gets hurt. And look,
well, this is because DeCosta and Harbaugh get up and say, Devin Duvernay, James Brochet, we believe in our guys. Like, remember DeCosta lying about that before the draft last year, and then going out and drafting Bateman? They've never had enough at that position. I mean, we talked about this since Anquan Bolden. It's a decade now, right?
I mean, it really is. I mean, for an organization that has been so good in so many ways, it continues to be such a blind spot. And look, I get it. We've championed this idea of the Ravens zigging while everyone else zags. And I understand that. And I'm not saying the Ravens have to have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. I'm not saying the Ravens need to run or pass the football more than anyone in the NFL. It's not about that. It's never been about volume. It's an argument in bad faith whenever people come back and say, well, they're not trying to throw the ball 45 or 50 times. Very few teams are in the National Football League. What they do need to be able to do, though, is throw the football at an efficient rate. And this goes back to 2019. This has never been a high volume passing game. But go back and look at 2019. Lamar Jackson led the league in touchdown passes, MVP of the league. Football Outsiders, their DVOA efficiency metric. It's just about efficiency. It looks at every game situation, down and distance, score, adjusted for opponent, all those different things. Context matters, right? We know that not all 5-yard plays are created equally, depending on the down and distance and the score and all of that. They were first in the league in passing efficiency that year. If you want to look at expected points added, another nerd stat that measures efficiency, they were first in EPA that year. They were a really good passing offense in terms of when they had to do it, they did it really, really well. Now, we know that it wasn't an offense that went out of its way to try to throw 40 or 45 times, and no one is arguing that. Anyone who's presented a good faith argument about the state of this passing game and the state of this offense has never been someone to say, oh, Lamar needs to throw it 50 times a game. No. But it comes back to when you do throw, you have to throw it way better than what we've been seeing. And no, it's not just a Tyler Huntley thing. As I wrote at BaltimorePositive.com, and look, we'll get to Greg Roman in a moment. There's plenty to say about Greg Roman and just lacking a feel and a rhythm and running the ball more than they should have on Saturday. But it still comes back to you have to have a functioning, at least a fairly high level functioning passing game. And the Ravens haven't had that since week 3. Lamar threw 10 touchdowns over the first 3 weeks of the season. He was at 8.5 yards per pass attempt. That's really good. Everyone was talking about calling back to 2019 and
he
Lamar
was an
being
MVP candidate
the
in
first
September.
month of the season. Yeah, no question about it. Since then, so we're talking what they're 9-5, and he's played roughly 10 games since then.
Ever since he held that
2.
sign up that said "Pay him" in the tunnel, right? Literally in the middle of the night.
Yeah. But that aside, since those first 3 weeks of the season, Nestor, he's averaged 6.3 yards per pass attempt, which I looked at it Sunday morning before we got into the full day of NFL action. That would have ranked 31st in the NFL among qualified quarterbacks for the entire season. Now, let's be very clear about that. That is not me saying that solely as an indictment of Lamar Jackson. Far from it. It's a reflection of this entire operation and the fact that this passing game has been broken since October. And they showed very few signs of looking like it wasn't broken.
Am I nuts to think that they've had more drop balls than any other team in the league, given their they don't pass as much, right? So they only throw the ball 20 times, and when there's 5 drops, that's a hell of a lot of drops. I mean, there have been weeks where there have been 5, 6 drops consistently off of 20, 26 passes, and I'm thinking to myself, the efficiency, if just guys would catch. When it hits you between the 8 and the 9, you catch it, right? When it hits you between the 1 and whatever vanity number you're wearing these days, you catch the ball, right? The last 6 or 8 weeks, and especially even in the victories, I mean, they've won a lot of games. I mean, it feels like they've lost a lot. They lost to the Browns. They were winning games for a month before that, not looking great doing it. But if you're going to measure offense for drops, and I don't mean – like maybe he could have caught it. Lamar's a little left, a little right, a little high, a little low, whatever. I'm just talking about flat out, if you're a National Football League receiver, you should catch the ball. Everybody in the huddle's guilty of a handful this year. And I think to myself, what would that do to your indictment of Lamar? I mean, I'm not his protector, believe me. Not any of these guys' protector at this point. You know that. But I banging on Lamar when, to your point, banging on Roman. You're about to crush Roman. I see the guys getting in the huddle, dude, and I'm thinking, bring Mike Martz in, bring anybody you want in here. I mean, I looked in the huddle. Hill, Ricard, Deshaun Jackson, some guy named Robinson, Andrew some of the time. Some of the time it's some guy named Josh Oliver. I'm like, and then when it's not that, it's Kenyon Drake, or you're like, who are these guys? And I'll hear the fact that the running back's got the ability and he's trying his ass off because he's in a contract year. We're not talking about his money, we're talking about Lamar's money. But these guys aren't even healthy. Mark Andrews is not healthy. I'll never buy that. He stands at his locker. He's as bad a liar as Harbaugh is. He's not healthy.
Well, and he's also getting way more attention in coverage. He's getting Greg Roman acknowledged it this past week. He's seeing more double teams than he did in the past. And that's saying something because it's not as though teams just figured out that Mark Andrews is really important to what the Ravens do. But to go back to address a few things you said. Well, you said Robinson. DeMarcus Robinson's actually been one of their few, Saturday aside, one of their few very modest, albeit success stories as it relates to the wide receiver position this year. I mean, we have to
Dude, if
acknowledge.
that's a success, I need to see failure. I
Well,
mean, I'm not being mean. I'm just saying, like, he is what he is. He was available because he's available.
Exactly.
You're going to put him in a one spot and throw him the ball five,
Well,
6 times in a game. He's going to catch 2 or 3. God bless him. I think that's what this is right now.
right, exactly. I mean, he was Kansas City's number 3 or number 4 option. I mean, he was cut by the Raiders midway through training camp. I mean, my point is not to say that he's been great. My point is for what that was, which was, I guess, Eric DeCosta's best attempt to replace Marquise Brown, which, is again another discussion for another day. But he is what he is. As you just said, he's masquerading as a number 1 wide receiver right now by default, and he should be a number 3 or number 4. Deshaun Jackson. I mean, God bless him. He's had a really good career. He made a big play in Jacksonville that should have won the game if the defense didn't blow it at the end. But he's 36 years old. What do you expect?
Nobody gives referees grief like that guy. Like I always disliked that. Like that was a guy I rooted against always. Deshaun Jackson, always a mouthiest guy. Blah, blah, and he's still like a chihuahua out there yelling at the officials. Like it's, dude, just catch the ball. Get in and catch the ball. I mean, like literally.
But I think it's not just the guys that I mentioned, but Devin Duvernay's really slowed down to a point where even in the return game you're seeing he's muffing a punt. He's made some questionable decisions. I mean, he doesn't look as explosive. Is he hurt or is he just wearing down because he's playing so much? I don't know. But the point is, in a game like that where I get it, and I want to be clear, we're spending so much time talking about the passing game because it's critically important in the big picture, but they should have run the ball more on Saturday. I fully subscribe to that. However, you look at them trying to make plays in the fourth quarter of a football game, and they're targeting James Prochet on fourth down plays. James Prochet. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. He works hard. He's trying to make a name for himself in the NFL, but this is a guy who I'm not sure how many rosters he'd be on around the NFL at this point in time. So
I'm not sure how many rosters
really
any of these guys would be on. I'm not being mean. I'm just like, they cut DeMarcus Robinson tomorrow. Who's picking him up? I mean, like, same thing with Deshaun Jackson. Same thing with James Prochet. Duvernay, I mean, I'll give you the punt returns and his
return game, sure,
status, and I'll give you all that, but I don't know, man. I mean, they don't have National Football League skill position players, and I'm watching the Bengals run around at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm watching the Chiefs run around after toying like cat and mouse with the Texans, right? Like, I watch these real operations, real football players. I mean, I even see what this kid's doing for the Lions, right? And I see other skill position players in other places with limited quarterbacks, including Pittsburgh last week and Pittsburgh next week, right? Where you'd say, why don't we have guys that good? And we've been saying that for a long since Michael Jackson and Derek Alexander, dude.
I mean, it really comes down to this. I am not at all saying, once again, I'll continue to say this till I'm blue in the face, because people who want to continue to look at the bright side of things, and as you mentioned, they're 9-5. The season's not over. Let's be very clear about this. They're going to make the playoffs. They can clinch. They can clinch this weekend. I mean, there are scenarios with a win and another wild card contender loss. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're making the playoffs. Anyone is sitting there gloom and doom, and I've seen some of it on Facebook. Oh, they might miss the play. No, they're not going to miss the playoffs. Look at the rest of the field. Now, it's not where you want to be in terms of being one of the top 2 or 3 teams. And I don't think you're going to find anyone right now who would take the Ravens over Buffalo or Kansas City or Cincinnati.
Hey, how about this? They better beat the Falcons. I'll stop right here, because like Steelers are going to give them hell next week, period. And then Cincinnati, I mean, they're not going to Cincinnati and winning. I mean, unless Cincinnati doesn't want to win. I can't imagine a scenario. I mean, they might be up for a 1 seed at that point if they're the best team and the Bills falter and the Bills have a tougher schedule. Like, I watched the Bengals play. They're playing a different game than the Ravens are playing right now, and I tweeted as much.
Yeah, although I'd say Cincinnati did not look good in that first half, though. I mean, I think that wild game, right? I mean, Tampa Bay looked so good. I mean, maybe the best half of football the Bucks had played all year, and then that third quarter was a disaster. I mean, that was a dumpster fire. How bad that was. Way worse than anything we saw from the Ravens on Saturday, which was just listless and weird and lacking energy. But I mean, they just kicked the ball around, everything. But I'd say this: we're getting ready to celebrate Christmas, and it's the holidays, and everyone's talking about what you're, what you love, what you appreciate. Think back to Thanksgiving, though. The Ravens should be thankful, and the Bengals as well, that they've gotten to play the NFC South this year, because boy, PU, what a terrible division that is. And you mentioned the Falcons. I mean, rookie quarterback. I watched the game. Desmond Ritter, he's got a good arm, but boy, it was lacking. It was an operation that
Well, they got a running back.
They have to run the football.
Yeah.
And what does the Ravens defense do best? They stop the run. So I'm with you on that. I mean, I fully expect the Ravens to win on Saturday, but do I expect a blowout? No, because the Ravens don't blow anyone out at this point, because this operation is just, it's not good enough. And they can run the ball. Yes. They should run the ball more. Yes. But even last week in Pittsburgh, we were talking about the Ravens running for 200 plus yards. They scored 16 points. You have to be able to throw the football at a higher level. But is that going to happen? Is this team going to figure that out over these final 3 weeks of the regular season and get on a roll come January? Certainly a higher chance of it with Lamar Jackson back on the field. So certainly some more optimism there than if Tyler Huntley was playing out the string, as we saw last year. But it's been broken for a long time. We haven't seen this passing game operate at a very high level for more than a quarter or two or a game or two since early October. And it's tough to envision that changing at this point. So 9-5, they're still in good shape. They're still, quote, fine, as I wrote at BaltimorePositive.com. But anyone who watched Saturday's game, anyone who's watched this passing game now for a couple months, it's hard to feel that the Ravens are fine at this point. But hey, the Atlanta Falcons coming to town could be a nice elixir for what ails them, at least for 1 week.
Well, Justin Tucker and I don't have a whole lot in common, but we both drink Royal Farms coffee. I'm drinking it out of my Cole Roofing mug this morning. Luke Jones is here. We're getting you ready for Christmas weekend, getting you ready for Christmas Eve action with the Falcons. You can go out to BaltimorePositive.com. Going to have a lot of greatest hits coming your way at AM 1570. Going to be resurrecting some old interviews during the New Year's week as well. And the man who saved my wife's life on the bone marrow registry is going to be visiting with us in Baltimore for the holidays. So we're blessed about all that. So you'll be hearing lots and lots of stuff this week, including our crab cake tour stop at Costas with Gina Schock, John Allen, a whole bunch of friends from Hammerjacks and Beyond Words, and my old high school art teacher. Just great, great stories available for you out at BaltimorePositive.com. You'll also be hearing them here at AM 1570 all week long, all presented by our friends at the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Goodwill and Window Nation. I got my Window Nation gear on right now. I promise you, one of the great things I did this year was invest in Windows. 866-90-NATION. Been 39 years since I have Windows in the house, and made it all happen. And you can do that. You buy two, you get two free. 0% financing all month long. Happy holidays, everybody out there. Luke's going to be in Owings Mills all week long, making sure that it happens for you out on social media. And if there's any breaking news, you get that first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Baltimore Ford. And Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for the weekend. And, of course, Christmas morning. We may have a reading of Tony Saragusa's Was the Night Before Christmas at some point here before the week's over as well. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive.